There was an empty seat at the dinner table, and I was the only one who noticed it wasn't mine anymore. The room had that warm, filtered glow feeling that June evenings sometimes bring in Oregon. Soft golden light spilling through the wide windows, the polished wood of the long table catching its reflection. You'd think it was peaceful, picturesque. But underneath the calm shimmer, something was off-kilter. Like a note played slightly out of tune. Mom had gone all out. Fresh-cut flowers, cloth napkins, name tags in her perfect cursive beside every place setting. I looked for mine without thinking. Walked around once. Then again. My name wasn't there. Last summer, my chair had a name tag. This year, it didn't even exist. Oh, Rachel. Mom's voice sliced through my moment of stillness. She was radiant in a breezy coral dress, glowing like she belonged in a lifestyle magazine spread titled Effortlessly Elegant Matriarch. Could you just squeeze in at the end? We had to shift things around a little. Ethan's bringing a friend. Of course he was. I smiled, or at least I used my face muscles in a way that resembled one. Sure, no problem. I carried my homemade pie, blueberry lattice still warm, to the sideboard. No one glanced at it. Aunt Liza was already halfway through a monologue about her latest home renovation. Cousin Jake showed off a new smartwatch. Laughter bounced across the table like a ping-pong ball, light and meaningless. I found my seat at the far end, cornered next to a potted plant and half a view of the backyard. There was no fork set for me. I fetched one from the kitchen myself. So, about the cabins. Ethan's voice lifted above the rest. We'll divide up by family units, couples in the lakefront ones, obviously. I think the kids'll love the fire pit spot. Murmurs of agreement rippled down the table. Cabins. I blinked. Wait, what cabins? Ethan didn't hear me, or pretended not to. He was too busy fielding questions, taking command like he always did. His sleeves were rolled up just enough to reveal a tan line and a hint of gym work. Classic Ethan. Casual power. I tried again. Is there a family trip? That got a few glances. Mom tensed. Barely, but I saw it. She reached for the breadbasket. Oh, honey, we didn't think you'd have the time. I stared at her. You didn't ask. Well, she began, tone gentle but airtight. You've always been so busy with work and everything. We just assumed. Assumed what? That I wouldn't want to be around my own family? That I didn't matter enough to check? I would have made time, I said quietly. No one answered. Forks scraped plates. Laughter resumed somewhere down the line as if nothing had been said. After dinner, I wandered into the kitchen to put away my untouched pie. The fridge door swung open easily, and there it was, taped beside a list of groceries and Ethan's gym schedule. An itinerary. Header in bold, family retreat. Crystal Shores Cabins, July 12th to 19th. Names, neatly arranged in columns. Linda, Ethan, Lisa, Jake, kids, in-laws, plus ones. A total of 118 names. I scanned twice. Thrice. Mine wasn't there. I stared at the paper until the words swam. The kind of invisibility you don't feel until you're standing right in front of it. Until it spells itself out in ink and itinerary. Mom walked in, wiping her hands with a linen towel. She followed my gaze but didn't flinch. We finalized it weeks ago, she said too lightly. You didn't think I should know? We didn't want to assume. You get prickly when plans change. Prickly. I laughed. It came out dry, unfamiliar. Right, so the solution is to not include me at all. A pause. Well, she said with a smile that could slice stone. I'm sure we can make room somehow, if it's that important to you. That important? I left the pie on the counter and walked back into the dining room. People were clearing plates. Ethan was hugging someone goodbye. I stood near the center of the room, searching for any face that would meet mine. None did. When were you planning to tell me I wasn't family anymore? I asked. No one answered. They invited 118 people to the summer trip, including my third cousin's newborn, but not me. The photo came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was between meetings, slouched on my couch with a lukewarm coffee in hand, when my phone buzzed. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in over a year, someone I barely remembered sharing crayons with as kids, had sent it with a cheerful caption, "Wish you were here." I tapped it open. The image bloomed across the screen. My entire extended family gathered under a hand-painted banner that read, "Crystal Shores Reunion 2025, in bold bubble letters. Balloons danced in the wind. Everyone smiled. Sun-kissed, shirt-sleeved, carefree. Linda had done her hair in those soft waves she reserved for family photos. Ethan, of course, stood dead center, arms slung around both our parents. Even third cousin Michelle's newborn was there, asleep in a stroller beside a picnic table loaded with food. I kept staring, hoping maybe I'd find myself tucked away in a corner. Maybe someone thought I was coming late. Maybe they saved me a seat. But no, there were 118 people. I counted. I zoomed in, swiped left and right, recognized faces I hadn't seen in years, and not one of them was mine. I closed the photo and reopened it. Like maybe this time it would change. Instead, my thumb tapped into an old email. Linda's holiday greeting from 2 Decembers ago. "We never leave anyone behind," she'd typed, complete with a string of tree emojis and an inspirational quote at the bottom. "Family is everything." I tossed the phone onto the coffee table. My apartment was quiet. Always was. Soft yellow walls, shelves lined with awards no one ever asked about, a fridge covered in magnets from cities I'd visited alone. A certificate from my master's program hung slightly crooked near the kitchen entryway. I hadn't bothered to straighten it. The buzzer sounded, sharp and abrupt. Natalie, right on cue. She swept in holding a bottle of Merlot and a plastic bag with 2 slices of fancy bakery quiche. "I brought dinner because I love you," she announced, kicking off her shoes. "And also because you looked like a ghost in your last voice message." I gave a dry laugh. "You're not far off." It took 2 sips of wine and 1 slice of quiche before the photo conversation happened. I didn't even show her the image. I just told her the number. "Wait," she said, blinking. "They invited 118 people?" "Including babies," I added. "Even Michelle's kid. He can't even sit up yet." Natalie's eyes widened. "And they didn't even tell you about it?" "They didn't even send the itinerary?" I muttered. I found it taped to the fridge, like I was a stranger in someone else's house. She put down her glass. "Rachel, do you hear how insane that sounds?" "I know," I said, voice thin. "No, I don't think you do. Because if I were you, I'd be knocking on doors or setting cars on fire right now." That made me laugh, really laugh. For a moment, it felt like oxygen had returned to the room. Natalie leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You need to stop waiting for an invitation to your own story. They've been pretending you're optional. That ends now." The words hit harder than I expected. I looked away. The screen of my phone still glowed, the group chat, the whole fam heart, still pinned at the top. It hadn't buzzed in days. I tapped into it, scrolled through messages about sunscreen, carpooling, cabin assignments, and Ethan's fun dad jokes list. No one had noticed I wasn't replying. Quietly, I held my finger on the chat title, hovered for a breath, and tapped, "Leave group." A small confirmation window popped up. I clicked OK without hesitation. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was relief. I opened my laptop, fingers moving without much thought. A blank Google Doc blinked into existence. I gave it a title. The family trip I wasn't on. The first time I made a room laugh, I was 10, and I got grounded for it. It was the school talent show, 4th grade. The cafeteria had been transformed into a makeshift theater, fold-out chairs, paper stars dangling from the ceiling, and a creaky stage built from risers and masking tape. I'd signed up last minute, scribbled my name under Other on the sign-up sheet. I didn't dance or sing or play the recorder like the rest of them. I did impressions. Specifically, I did Grandma Ida, the hair bun, the walk, the way she muttered, "Mercy alive, these children eat like raccoons," when we polished off snacks during family visits. I mimicked the flutter of her hands when she blessed the food and the exaggerated way she checked her purse 3 times before leaving church. The room had roared. Actual teachers doubled over. One kid fell out of his chair. For the first time in my life, all eyes were on me, but not in pity or confusion, in delight. When it was over, I skipped off the stage like I was floating. That feeling lasted all of 10 minutes. In the car ride home, Linda didn't say a word. She drove with one hand, the other curled into a fist on her lap. I tried to fill the silence. "Did you see how Mrs. Hill laughed so hard she had to sit down?" She didn't look at me. "You turned us into a joke." "What?" "You don't make fun of your family in public, especially not your elders." "I wasn't making fun." "You embarrassed us," she snapped. "You embarrassed me." We pulled into the driveway. The porch light was off. Ethan was already inside, probably polishing his spelling bee trophy. He hadn't even attended the show. Linda cut the engine and turned to me. "You're grounded for a week." I blinked. "For making people laugh?" "For not thinking," she said, voice cold. "You need to understand. Our family isn't something to be laughed at. Do you want people to think we're weird? Poor? Trashy?" I didn't know how to answer that. I was 10. All I knew was something that had felt magical was now something I was being punished for. That night, I stared at the ceiling of my bedroom, wondering if Grandma would have laughed. I thought she might have. But I never did impressions again. Not at school, not at home, not even privately. That part of me curled inward and stayed there. In the present, I sat cross-legged on my apartment floor, laptop glowing in front of me, a half-eaten quesadilla beside it. The photo from Crystal Shores still lived in my downloads folder, unopened. I clicked it once, just long enough to confirm it hadn't disappeared like a dream. Then I opened a new document. It started as a title, "The Family Ghost," but that felt too poetic. I deleted it. I typed again, "Have you ever been forgotten while still breathing?" I stared at the sentence. It didn't feel like a joke, but it felt like a beginning. Natalie had suggested it. Stand up. Not as a career, as therapy. Go on stage, say whatever you want, and watch them have to listen. Best power trip in the world, she said, sipping coffee like it was gospel. I didn't know if I could, but I created a new email account, raystandup@gmail.com, signed up for a Tuesday open mic at a dive bar 15 blocks from home. No one I knew would be there. It was the kind of place with sticky floors and $2 beers and a cracked neon sign that read, "Live LOLs" in flickering red. I signed my name under an alias, Ray L. It was close enough to feel honest, but far enough that if I bombed, I could pretend she was someone else. The night came fast. I stood backstage, if you could call it that, with a napkin in one hand and a gin and tonic in the other. My set was 5 minutes. My heart raced like it was 5 hours. They called my name. I walked out. Spotlight. One mic. 24 strangers, mostly talking among themselves. One guy sneezed. I inhaled, then read the first line I had written. "Have you ever been forgotten while still breathing?" For the first time in 15 years, I said it out loud, and nobody stopped me. I only wanted 10 people to hear it. 1 million did. The Christmas lights dangled from the ceiling like tired tinsel, their red and green glow giving the bar a faintly apocalyptic cheer. It was June, but no one had bothered to take them down. The floor stuck under my boots, and the mic smelled like regret and backwash. But when the host called Ray L., I walked up like I wasn't terrified, like my stomach wasn't halfway up my throat. Natalie waved from the back, her phone camera tilted in her palm. She wasn't filming. "Just ready," she said, "in case you go viral and become a queer comedy icon overnight." I'd laughed, brushing her off. "It's just a bar set, Nat. No one records at these things." But even then, part of me knew. I gripped the mic with both hands, took a breath, then let it out, along with the line I'd practiced in the mirror too many times. So, my family invited 118 people on their annual summer trip, including my third cousin's newborn, but not me. The crowd laughed. One woman in the front actually snorted. I smiled, almost sheepish. No, really. I zoomed in. There's a banner, a spreadsheet, color-coded itineraries. My name was, poof, missing. Laughter again, a little louder. It's funny, right? Because I'm alive. I exist. I'm here. But apparently the family group chat doesn't think so. I paced a little, remembering what it felt like to scroll through those sunlit beach photos, knowing every single person in them had known I wasn't coming. And no one thought to text, or ask, or even lie. I called my mom. She said, "Oh, honey, we figured you'd be busy. You're always so independent." Like being left out was a compliment. The room shifted. Not cold, just quieter, more focused. I went on. I think there's a point when you realize you're not being forgotten. You're being excluded. There's a difference. One's an accident. The other's a decision. I looked down at the mic, then up again. No one asked if I was okay. That was the line that did it. The air changed. I finished the set with a half joke about crashing the next trip in a shark costume and demanding reparations. The audience clapped. Not out of pity, not politely, loud and fast and real. Natalie hugged me afterward. You killed. And guess what? I got the whole thing. I hesitated. You recorded it? Just 2 minutes. The best part. Can I post it? We'll use your alias. No names, no tags. I nodded. Sure. Who's gonna care? 10 people watch stand-up clips on Tuesdays. Turns out, it wasn't Tuesday's fault. By Friday, it had 11,000 views. By Sunday, 800,000. By Monday morning, I woke up to 48,000 unread notifications. My phone buzzed so hard it fell off the nightstand. Instagram messages, Twitter reposts, TikTok stitches. My face, blurry and half-lit, was now part of a headline on BuzzVoice. Woman calls out toxic family with mic drop comedy set. I was a hashtag. I was on Reddit threads titled, "When Your Family Forgets You on Purpose." Natalie came over that night with Thai food and 3 bottles of wine. She was beaming. This is huge, Ray. Like, this changes things. You're a voice. I was still in sweatpants, numb. I didn't mean for people to relate this much. I muttered. Why not? Because it was personal. That wasn't a performance. That was me bleeding into a mic. She shrugged. Sometimes people need to hear blood. We scrolled through the comments. This broke me. I thought I was the only one invisible at the dinner table. She said it better than my therapist. It was overwhelming, gratifying, terrifying. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms into my eyes. I never said their names. I never even said my own. And yet, Natalie said softly, they know. I nodded. I felt it too. The next morning, there it was, sitting in my inbox like a tiny bomb wearing a suit. Subject, cease and desist. R. Mathers. My brother didn't call to check on me. He sent a lawyer instead. The email arrived just past 6 in the morning, the digital equivalent of a slap while half asleep. No subject line, just forwarded message, confidential communication. I blinked at the screen, rereading the sender. Ethan Mathers, partner, Stonewell and Kane LLP. A firm name that sounded like it billed by the breath. The body of the email was colder than the June drizzle outside my apartment window. Words like defamation, false light, and irreparable harm coiled through the document like barbed wire. I hadn't said their names. I hadn't described specific events or dates. But apparently, I had still exposed something they were desperate to keep buried. I poured black coffee into a chipped mug and let the burn steady me. My hands didn't shake. Not like they would have last year, or even last month. I scrolled to the signature block, marveling at the neat serif font of Ethan's name, the weight of his curated power. He hadn't even written me a line of his own, just passed me off like a file on his cluttered desk. Natalie called before I had the chance to breathe properly. "You see it?" she asked. No greeting, just war readiness. "I did," I said. Apparently, my truth is legally inconvenient. She whistled low. "Well, they blinked first. That's something." I laughed, sharp and brief. He didn't even text. Didn't say, "Rachel, are you okay?" Just cease and desist. Maybe he did cease to care. And now he's trying to desist your existence. Her jokes were always sharp when she was angry. I read her a section aloud. "Our client demands you immediately remove the video content and any derivative works that may cause reputational damage to the Mathers family." Natalie's voice was suddenly slow and gleeful. Oh, you have to perform this." I blinked. "What?" "Read it. On stage. Word for word. You have to. It's too good." I hesitated, even as the idea took root. "Won't that make it worse?" She was grinning through the phone. "Rachel, they already think you're a threat. Why not prove them right?" That night, I took the mic with a different kind of confidence. Not trembling this time, not unsure. "Hey, everyone," I began. "So apparently I'm in legal trouble, which is honestly the most attention I've gotten from my family since 2012 laughter. I got a cease and desist letter this morning from my brother's law firm, because nothing says I love you like legal threats at sunrise." The audience chuckled, leaning in. I pulled out my phone, unlocked the screen. So I thought, what better way to honor my family's request than to share it with all of you? More laughter. Then silence as I began to read. "Dear Ms. Mathers, it has come to our attention that content disseminated on social media platforms may have caused irreparable harm to the reputation of..." I paused for dramatic effect. "Certain family members who remain unnamed but have clearly recognized themselves in the content." The crowd roared. I continued, alternating between a mock British accent and deadpan delivery. Every line, false and misleading information, emotional distress, reputational injury, became a punchline. It was the kind of set you only deliver when you've stopped asking for permission. When you realize the spotlight isn't about being seen, it's about taking up space no one thought you deserved. I closed with the only line that had echoed in my head all day. Funny how they hear me when it's a legal threat. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then chairs scraped back, hands slapped together, and a standing ovation rose around me like a wave. Natalie met me backstage with tears in her eyes and a grin like she'd just won a bet with the universe. "You just broke the internet," she whispered. Again. The high didn't wear off until the next morning when I checked my email and saw it. Subject: casting, next stand-up voice body. "We loved your set. We want you on our next episode. Let's talk." They didn't call me. They posted a statement. I was brushing my teeth when the first text came in, then another. Then my phone lit up like a slot machine that refused to pay out. I hadn't said anything controversial since the cease and desist bit. I hadn't named names. I hadn't even opened Twitter that morning. But the vibrations wouldn't stop. I finally grabbed my phone, still holding my toothbrush like a dagger. The message was from a college friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Wow, they really went there. I blinked, swiped, opened Instagram, then Twitter, then Facebook, just to confirm it was everywhere. "We are heartbroken to see a former member of our family using made-up stories to gain internet attention. While we value honesty and love, we cannot remain silent when reputations are attacked without basis. We wish her well in her creative journey." My picture wasn't included, but my name trended alongside family drama, stand-up meltdown, and toxic comedians. They hadn't reached out to me privately. No phone call, no text. Just a carefully written statement with line breaks and faux empathy, posted like a celebrity's PR disaster. Even the font looked sterile. Natalie barged into my apartment less than an hour later, carrying 2 bagels and enough anger to burn through drywall. They posted a statement? She asked, waving her phone like it might combust. What are they? A nonprofit after a scandal? A toothpaste company recalling moldy caps? I couldn't speak yet. I was still scrolling. Every comment under the post felt like a scrape. Some were trolls, but some weren't. Some were people I knew. Friends from childhood, college peers, even a guy I had once tutored in calculus. Honestly, she always seemed like she wanted attention. I wasn't crying, but something inside me had gone very still, like a house in the middle of a blackout. They called me a former family member, I said finally. Natalie sat down beside me. They didn't call you anything. That's the point. They dehumanized you into a paragraph. I nodded slowly. The only time they use my name is when it's a liability. We sat in silence for a few moments, just the hum of the fridge and the clicks of my feed refreshing itself with more toxicity. Do you want to respond? She asked gently. I looked at her, voice dry. I've never not responded. By nightfall, I was backstage again. Same microphone, same scuffed stage. But my pulse was different now, steadier, resigned maybe, or just tired of being subtle. I stepped up, took the mic, and smiled. So let's talk about families, I began casually, like I was discussing the weather. You know the kind, the ones that say blood is thicker than water, right before they leak a press release about your betrayal. The audience tensed, then chuckled. You ever been ghosted by your mother? Not emotionally. I mean, like, she publicly denies knowing you but still uses your old baby pictures for clout. Laughter built, uneasy but genuine. And here's the wild part. They said I'm making up stories. I wish I had that kind of imagination. I'd have invented a family that called instead of posting statements. The crowd was roaring now. One guy in the back shouted, "Tell 'em." Oh, I will, I said smoothly, stepping forward. Let's talk about families who post statements instead of apologies. Gasps and laughter fused in the air. I stood there a moment longer, letting the silence after the punchlines settle like dust after a demolition. I didn't wait for applause this time. I walked off stage, past the lights, back into the dark wings, where Natalie was waiting with her arms crossed and a proud smirk. They're going to hate this, she said. I hope they frame it, I replied. They didn't call me. They posted a statement. I found out before I even got out of bed. My phone buzzed nonstop against the nightstand, vibrating itself toward the edge like it was trying to escape. I reached for it, blinking against the glare, only to see 20 missed calls, 32 texts, and an Instagram tag that made my stomach twist. Linda's face was the first thing I saw. A professionally lit photo. Arms crossed, her "I'm deeply disappointed but still graceful" expression locked in place. The caption beneath it read, Statement from the Mathers family, June 18th. I didn't have to click, but of course I did. We are heartbroken to see a former member of our family choose to fabricate events from the past to gain public attention. We have always believed in forgiveness, privacy, and unity. It saddens us to see personal matters become public spectacles. We will not be commenting further. No mention of my name, but every sentence screamed it. Natalie burst in through the door 10 minutes later, still in pajamas, holding 2 coffees and looking like she'd been up for days. You saw it, right? She demanded, shoving a cup into my hand. I did, I muttered, scrolling through the comments. She threw her arms up. A statement? What is this? An election cycle? I thought they were musicians, not public relations specialists. They chose Instagram over a phone call, I said quietly, more to myself than to her. Comments flooded in beneath the post. Wow, clout chasing much? Can't believe she'd do this to her own family. Always knew something was off about her. Some of the usernames were familiar. People I'd gone to school with. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. A woman I'd helped through a breakup. I'd expected silence from the family, But I hadn't anticipated this. Spin. The press latched onto it within hours. Articles with headlines like "Estranged Daughter's Comedy Stirring Up Trouble" and "Family Pushes Back Against Viral Bitterness" began circulating. One of them quoted an anonymous family source who said, "I always had a flair for exaggeration." Natalie paced like a general before war. This is what they do when they can't control you. They try to rewrite you. I closed my eyes, breathing through the knot in my chest. They turned me into a headline? Again. What are you going to do? I didn't answer immediately. My phone buzzed again. An anonymous DM that just read, "Hope the clicks were worth it." I opened my laptop, stared at the blank script file. My fingers hovered over the keys. Natalie sat beside me, her presence grounding. "You have the mic, Ray. Use it." I started typing. That night, I took the stage at a low-lit club, a place that smelled like spilled beer and burnt ambition. The usual crew was there, but tonight they watched me differently. Curious, maybe even a little afraid. I adjusted the mic. Let the silence breathe. Let's talk about families who post statements instead of apologies. Laughter burst forward. Relief and recognition. Let's talk about the relatives who'd rather curate a brand than fix a bruise. You ever notice how some families turn into PR firms the minute you say something real? The crowd leaned in. I didn't know I was a former member of my family until they wrote a press release about it. And honestly, I wasn't even CC'd. I mimicked a formal voice. "We believe in unity and privacy." Translation: "We believe in pretending everything's fine and never saying sorry." Laughter swelled again, bitter and bright. I glanced toward the back of the club where Natalie was nodding like a proud campaign manager. They didn't call me. They called their image consultant. I paused, the room holding its breath. My family didn't lose me. They just gave me away. And now they're mad I talk about it. The lights felt hotter than usual, the weight of truth pressing against my spine. But I stood tall. I closed the set with a shrug. I guess I'm still the family embarrassment. But now at least I get to write the caption. The applause was loud, raw, real. And the next morning, the clip had more views than the first. I wasn't raised by a family. I was raised by a PR team. That line hit harder than I expected. Maybe it was the way I said it. Too flat to be ironic, too true to be a joke. Or maybe it was the Friday night crowd, half buzzed and looking for catharsis disguised as laughter. "Welcome to law school for invisible people," I said, pacing the small stage like a professor in a cracked leather jacket. Today's lecture: what happens when you're funny enough to get sued by your own bloodline? A murmur of laughter rippled through the audience. I held up a few printed sheets of paper. "This," I continued, "is Exhibit A, the cease and desist letter I got from my family's legal counsel, which also happens to be my brother. So that's neat." More laughter. Natalie was front row, recording discreetly. A small local journalist was seated at the back. Someone from the Portland Observer, I think. Scribbling notes, looking half bewildered and half thrilled. I cleared my throat dramatically and began reading from the document. "Dear Ms. Mathers, it has come to our attention that recent performances contain material that may cause irreparable harm to the reputation of the Mathers family." I paused, eyes wide. Irreparable harm. Sounds like I exposed national security. Not that I told the internet I wasn't invited to the family barbecue. The crowd laughed louder. I leaned on the mic stand, letting the laughter roll. I love how they say recent performances like I'm Beyoncé dropping a concept album. I have a microphone and unresolved trauma. That's it. The laughter turned into cheers. I broke the rest of the letter into bits, using each paragraph as setup for a story they didn't want anyone to hear. Like the time I was 7 and won a statewide writing contest. And my parents didn't attend the ceremony because Ethan had a piano recital scheduled the same day. Or the birthday where they gifted me a secondhand sweater 2 sizes too big while Ethan got a new Fender Stratocaster. It only took them 10 years to notice me. Through a lawyer. That line brought the house down. Someone in the back yelled, "Testify," which made me laugh so hard I had to pause. I hadn't expected the audience to be this ready. Not just ready, but ravenous. It wasn't just a comedy set anymore. It felt like a rally, like the quiet kids at the table finally had a spokesperson. By the time I closed the show with my usual deadpan, "Thanks for coming to this week's group therapy. Bring your legal representation next time," I was sweating under the stage lights and more alive than I'd been in years. Natalie met me backstage, breathless. "You just punched a hole through the ceiling." The journalist caught me near the exit. She held up a press badge and asked, "Do you mind if I quote some of that for a piece?" "I think people need to hear this." I nodded, stunned. Later that night, as we ate greasy Thai food on my apartment floor, Natalie showed me her phone. "Rachel," she whispered, "you've been reposted by Harold Owens." I froze. "The lawyer?" "Yeah, the lawyer. He called it the best cross-examination I've seen all year. And he's not joking. Look." She showed me the tweet. A link to the clip already with 100,000 views, and Harold's caption. "If more comedians were this sharp, I'd be out of a job." I stared at the screen, heart thudding. This was bigger now. Not just about a missed vacation or a toxic dinner. It was about voice. About being silent so long that the truth came out sounding like punchlines. I went to bed buzzing. My limbs ached, but in a good way. Like I'd finally pushed through a wall that had been up since childhood. At 1:43 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown caller. I almost didn't answer. But something made me swipe. "Hello?" A pause. Then a familiar voice, lower than I remembered. "Rachel, it's Ethan." He didn't say hi. He said, "What do you want?" I almost laughed. Almost. But the silence between us was sharp enough to bleed, so I held it in and leaned against the kitchen counter. The city was quiet. The kind of late-night hush that only makes tense voices louder. I could see the blinking traffic light through my window, flashing red like a heartbeat that wouldn't settle. "What do I want?" I said slowly. "Ethan, you called me." "Number I'm responding," he snapped. "You made this public. You dragged our family into your performance art." I glanced at the whiskey I'd just poured. Didn't sip it. Just watched the amber liquid ripple. "Is that what you think this is?" I asked. "Performance art?" "You're ruining everything, Rachel," he said, low and cold. "Mom and Dad's record label is under review. Contracts are frozen. Sponsors are backing out. And you think that's my fault? You aired dirty laundry on a national stage." I told the truth. "You edited it into punchlines." I almost dropped the glass. Instead, I set it down hard on the countertop and took a step toward the window. Outside, a couple laughed as they passed below, their joy cracking against the tension in my apartment. "Do you remember?" I said carefully. "When I was 14 and we did that family fundraiser event and I was supposed to introduce the act?" He said nothing. "You walked on stage, took the mic from my hands and said, 'Let the real talent speak.' And everyone laughed. Even Mom. That was a joke, Rachel." "It wasn't." Silence. He exhaled through his nose. "Look, here's what we can do. You take down the video. We'll issue a statement. Creative misinterpretation. Whatever PR wants. Everyone moves on." I blinked. "You want me to delete the video that made people feel less alone just so you and Mom can keep your Spotify banner?" "It's not just about that. You've set something in motion that's not going to end well. You don't understand how these things spiral." "No, Ethan. You don't understand that I'm not afraid anymore. You're not famous. You're a glitch in the algorithm. This will pass. Don't burn everything just because you didn't get invited to a lake trip." My breath caught. "You really think this is about a vacation?" There was a pause. He recalibrated. "Rachel," he said, voice smoother now. "This can all quiet down. No lawyers, no tabloids, just family again. Think about Mom. She hasn't slept." I swallowed hard. Natalie from across the apartment gave me a look. She couldn't hear him, but she knew that expression. She knew Ethan's voice could twist steel. "You think threatening me will bring me back?" I asked. "I'm giving you a way out." "And I'm giving you a warning," I said, voice steady. "I've been silenced before. It didn't work then. It definitely won't work now." "Fine," he said. "Then you should know who you're up against." I took a deep breath and turned from the window, walking back toward the couch where Natalie sat, eyes locked on mine. "For once," I said into the phone, "I know exactly that." I hung up. Some people beg for forgiveness. I got offered a TV contract. The waiting room of WPN Studios felt like a dentist's office, designed by someone with too much money and not enough warmth. Chrome fixtures, white faux leather couches, and silence that hummed with tension. Rachel sat still, knees pressed together, trying not to tap her foot. The soft whir of the air conditioner did little to calm her. Natalie sat next to her, arms folded, a silent fortress of side-eye and suspicion. The door opened with a soft click. "Rachel Mathers?" A tall man with buzzed hair and navy blue frames called her name. "I'm Reggie, casting director." He gave a brisk handshake, professional but polite. Then, without waiting for small talk, he turned on his heel. "Follow me." They were led down a corridor that looked like a minimalist art gallery. Glass panels on one side, blank white walls on the other. Rachel caught glimpses of people inside soundproofed rooms, rehearsing, performing, waiting. Inside the conference room, the table gleamed under fluorescent lights. A camera sat in the corner, dormant but visible. Reggie gestured for them to sit. "Let's get straight to it," he said, flipping open a sleek black folder. "We saw the clip, the one where you performed a cease and desist letter like a courtroom roast. It's already passed 6.2 million views." Rachel blinked. "I thought it was around 4 million. "It was until yesterday," Reggie said, deadpan. "And we're interested, very interested." He slid a packet across the table. "We're offering you a slot on the next season of Next Stand-Up Voice. You'll be one of 6 finalists, but we don't just want your material, we want your arc, the story beneath the jokes." Natalie raised an eyebrow. "You mean her family mess?" "I mean her truth," Reggie replied. "A story about silence, survival, and reclaiming voice. That's what sells now. Real stories." Rachel stared down at the contract. The pages looked thicker than they needed to be. The weight of attention was different than silence. It pressed instead of ignored. "There's a clause for content protection, right?" Natalie asked. "She won't wake up one day and find they edited her punchlines into a soap opera montage?" Reggie pointed to the highlighted section. "Clause 12B, final cut approval. Nothing airs without your explicit sign-off." Rachel inhaled. She thought of the times her voice was cut off mid-sentence, of microphones yanked, of eyes that rolled every time she spoke up at family dinners. This was hers. "I'll sign," she said, "but I'm putting a note next to that clause. No edits without written consent, no voiceovers, no reactions clipped in for drama." "Smart," Reggie said, nodding. "You're not just funny, you've got instincts." Natalie grinned. "Told you she was born for stage, even if she had to carve it out of a dinner table." They shook hands. Cameras clicked for a press release. Rachel smiled, but the corners of her eyes held a tension she couldn't quite explain. Back at the apartment, the mood had shifted. The room felt too still, like it was holding its breath. Rachel dropped her keys, turned on the light, and froze. On the doormat lay a thick manila envelope. Hand-delivered. No postage. Natalie bent down and picked it up. "No return address," she muttered. Rachel opened it. Her fingers stopped at the letterhead. Multnomah County Court. Subpoena enclosed. Her eyes scanned the lines. Mathers v. Mathers. Formal complaint filed by Ethan Mathers. Defamation, public harm, personal injury of reputation. Rachel let the paper fall onto the coffee table. Her shoulders didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. "So they're officially scared," she said quietly. Natalie looked at her, eyes narrowed. "You okay?" Rachel nodded once. "They started this war in whispers. I'll end it on stage. My brother sent a subpoena. I wrote a script. The lights above the stage weren't just bright. They were relentless." Rachel stood beneath them, palms open, spine straight, waiting. Waiting, not just for her cue, but for the moment she'd stop being a story people whispered about and become the one they listened to, without interruption. Backstage buzzed like a beehive of nerves and caffeine. Technicians rushed, headsets buzzed, cue cards fluttered, and someone shouted, "30 seconds to mic check," across the soundstage. The set of Next stand-up voice was massive. Cold floors, LED panels, a looming camera crane that moved like a curious beast. It was all so much louder than the comedy bars she'd grown used to. This was no open mic. This was America watching. On the corner table lay a thick yellow envelope. The subpoena. Rachel had carried it all morning, unopened. She already knew what it said. Her lawyer had summarized it plainly over eggs and burnt toast. Formal complaint, filed by Ethan Mathers on behalf of the family trust. Defamation, reputational harm, intentional emotional distress. You know, the usual. Rachel stirred her coffee without looking up. "So they're suing me for telling the truth?" He raised a brow. "Technically, for telling it publicly." He slid a document across the table. "My advice? Keep it metaphorical. Don't name names, don't use direct quotes. You're a comic. Get creative." Natalie, watching from the sink, had snorted. "You're telling her to disguise facts with punchlines? That's what she's been doing her whole life." Rachel smiled faintly. "Then I guess I'm qualified." She returned to her laptop. Hours of edits, deletions, rewrites. She trimmed rage into rhythm, sorrow into syllables. The first line came sharp and clean. "They called it a vacation. I called it the exile." Her set wasn't just jokes, it was testimony in disguise. Now, standing center stage, mic clipped, the producer gave her a 2-finger wave. "1 minute," someone called from the booth. Natalie was in the wings, mouthing, "You've got this." Rachel thought of all the silences she'd survived. Unanswered texts, skipped invitations, the time Ethan cut off her mic at a family wedding. "Let the real talent speak," he'd said. Funny how those words had stuck longer than any toast. The red sign flashed. On air. Rachel stepped into the light, took a breath, and let go. "Some families passed down heirlooms," she began, her voice steady. "Mine passed down edits." Laughter rolled like cautious waves, encouraging. She continued. "They taught me the difference between quiet and silence. One is polite, the other is punishment." She impersonated her mother, without saying, "Linda." She told a story about a committee that planned events like funerals. Efficient, exclusive, and always missing one name. She recited the letter Ethan's lawyers sent, translating legal jargon into absurd theater. "I received a subpoena, sub poena, Latin for, 'We weren't ready for you to speak.'" The crowd laughed, then quieted again as Rachel leaned closer to the mic. "They said I damaged the family's reputation, but you can't damage what's already been buried." She ended with a whisper. "They thought silence would protect them. I learned how to echo." There was no immediate applause, just breathless stillness. Then, thunder. The crowd rose in waves. Whistles, applause. A few standing, others wiping eyes. Backstage, the studio assistant ran in holding a tablet, her eyes wide. "The vote just went live. Look." She turned the screen. Most authentic voice of the year. Rachel Mathers, 78% and rising. Natalie clutched her arm. "You did it." Rachel didn't speak. She just stared at the number glowing on the screen. Proof, not of victory, but visibility. For the first time, her voice wasn't a secret, and the world was listening. They sued me for slander. I introduced them to my audience. The courthouse smelled of old wood, chilled marble, and something metallic beneath it all, like silence waiting to sharpen its blade. Rachel sat stiffly on the wooden bench beside her lawyer, back straight, palms damp against her skirt. Across the aisle, Ethan stood tall, chin lifted like he belonged to a better story. He didn't glance her way. Not once. "We are not attempting to silence Ms. Mathers," Ethan declared smoothly, voice clear as glass. "Only to protect the integrity of a family legacy under direct public attack." The judge, her expression unreadable, raised an eyebrow and scribbled something on a yellow pad. Rachel resisted the urge to laugh. Legacy? Integrity? She thought about the empty chair at dinner, the unseen invitations, the microphone Ethan had taken from her hands at 14. Now he was here to take her voice again. Only this time she had witnesses. Her lawyer stood. "Your Honor, Ms. Mathers has never named her family. She has never identified a single individual on air. Her work is metaphor, commentary, satire, protected under the First Amendment." The courtroom buzzed, low and charged. The judge nodded. "We'll move to mediation for now." In the hallway, the offer came like a poisoned olive branch. "They'll drop the lawsuit," her lawyer said, "if you agree to stop performing material about your upbringing, past or present." Rachel blinked once. "You mean stop telling my story?" "They're afraid," Natalie muttered, appearing at her side. "That's why they're bargaining." Rachel didn't even pause. "The answer's no." That night, the studio glowed brighter than usual. The theme was the sound of silence, and Rachel opened the set in total stillness. Just a single chair center stage, bathed in white light. She paced around it slowly, deliberately, heels echoing like punctuation marks. "I used to think silence meant safety, that not being noticed would keep me safe." She paused. "Turns out silence just keeps you invisible." The audience leaned in. She told stories, crafted, metaphorical, unnamed but unmistakable. About a girl raised to make herself small so others could shine. About a family that edited her out of photo albums and holiday itineraries, and then sued her for remembering it out loud. They asked me to stop, told me my words were dangerous. She turned to the camera, her voice quiet but sharp. "You know what's dangerous? Convincing someone their truth is impolite." A beat. Then laughter, then applause. And underneath it, something deeper. Recognition. By morning, the internet was on fire. A clip of Rachel's monologue, especially the part where she mimicked receiving the subpoena as if it were a wedding invitation, had crossed platforms, reposted by comedians, activists, and even a few politicians. One tweet read, "Rachel Mathers just gave the most polite dismantling of generational gaslighting I've ever seen." Then came the real shockwave. Women in Comedy, a respected national organization, issued a public letter praising Rachel for her bravery in transforming trauma into shared art. They offered her a full-year mentorship, tour slots, and press support. And then, just after lunch, the biggest blow landed. A leading wellness brand, formerly partnered with the Mathers Family Foundation, released a public statement. "Due to recent revelations and a conflict of values, we are terminating our sponsorship agreement with the Mathers Foundation, effective immediately." Rachel sat in her tiny kitchen, phone buzzing nonstop on the table. She didn't pick it up. Natalie stood by the window, stunned. "They're losing everything," she whispered. Rachel didn't smile, didn't cheer. She simply stared at her screen. They built a legacy by pretending she didn't exist. Now that she did, really did, they were watching it collapse. And all she had done was speak. They taught me to sing in harmony until I found my own voice. The studio tonight didn't just hum with excitement, it vibrated with something sacred. This wasn't just another comedy show. This was the anniversary gala for the network, a televised tribute to voices that dared to matter. Every seat in the house was filled. Cameras hovered. The press pit sparkled with eager lenses, but none of that reached Rachel. She stood backstage, wrapped in the soundproof hush of pre-performance calm. Her palms were slick, her chest tight. Still time to pull the tape, Natalie whispered, holding her clipboard like a shield. Rachel shook her head. I need to do this. All of it. Out front, the announcer's voice faded, replaced by soft piano chords as the stage dimmed. A single spotlight blinked to life at center stage, illuminating an empty mic stand beside an old dining chair. Just one. Rachel stepped into the light. No opening joke, no welcome. Just breathe. There was a rule in our house, she said, voice steady. We sang together, or not at all. Nervous laughter fluttered in the audience. A shared memory, perhaps. But Rachel didn't smile. But what they really meant, she continued, was that nobody sings alone. No solos, no deviation, no dissonance. She took the mic in hand, walking slowly around the chair. I learned early that silence was safer than melody, that raising your voice, even to be funny, was seen as betrayal. She paused, reached into her coat pocket, held up a small voice recorder. Click. A voice, cool, measured, unmistakably maternal, filled the studio. You embarrassed the family. Gasps escaped like popping bubbles. No one laughed now. That was my mother, Rachel said. Linda. She wasn't yelling. That wasn't a moment of weakness. That was her strength. Control. The audience had stilled. Someone sniffled in the fourth row. Rachel set the recorder down on the chair. She told me once, "We are a choir. No one gets a solo." Her voice trembled, but she did not stop. Well, tonight I do. She drew in a slow breath, grounding herself. I was told that my voice was too loud, too dramatic, too much. But you know what? She looked straight into the camera, her words clear as bell chimes. My name is Rachel Mathers. Linda is my mother. And I am not your silence anymore. The room erupted, not in raucous cheer, but something deeper. Applause rose like a wave. Some stood, some stayed seated, holding each other's hands. In the second balcony, a woman sobbed into her sleeve. In the third row, two teenagers, siblings, held on to every syllable like a lifeline. Backstage, Natalie cried openly, her tablet forgotten in her lap. Rachel bowed. Not deeply, just enough to acknowledge the shift. She had spoken her mother's name aloud, not with shame, not with satire, with truth. The performance would go on to trend globally within 12 hours. Clips titled, "A Symphony for One" would draw millions. Think pieces would be written. Journalists would scramble for interviews. By the next week, the show would be nominated for Best Televised Performance of the Year. But that night, back in her apartment, Rachel stood alone in the quiet. Her phone buzzed. A single message. From Linda. You ruined everything. They built their reputation on harmony. Now all I hear is the crash. The Arts Council building in downtown Crystal Lake had never seen this many reporters on a weekday, not even during gala season. The front lawn, usually decorated with local student sculptures and seasonal banners, was now occupied by satellite vans and journalists whispering into microphones. Inside, behind the tall glass doors, the air was tense. Every shuffle of paper echoed like a gavel. Rachel watched from her apartment, legs folded beneath her, a cup of cold tea resting on a stack of notes. The live feed buffered for a second, then resumed. In light of recent events, the council chair began, the Crystal Lake Arts Council has voted unanimously to rescind the 2023 Arts Family of the Year designation from the Mathers family, effective immediately. A murmur rippled through the room on screen. Behind the podium, Linda Mathers sat still, wearing her signature cream blazer. Her hands clutched the sides of her chair as though steadying herself against a storm only she could feel. George, her husband, sat beside her, face drawn. Ethan stared down at a closed leather folder, jaw clenched. It should have been a triumph to witness. But Rachel didn't feel triumphant. Just quiet, like standing in the aftermath of a collapse and hearing only the wind. A second announcement followed. The Winter Music Festival Committee has concluded that the Mathers' current media conflict poses too great a reputational risk. Their annual concert slot will be reallocated to local youth performers. That one landed harder. The Winter Music Festival had been the family's crown jewel. For 30 consecutive years, a Mathers name had headlined it. Rachel still remembered being 10, sitting cross-legged backstage while Ethan played his cello with calculated grace under colored lights. Back then, the applause felt unreachable. Now the stage was someone else's. Natalie walked into the apartment carrying 2 takeout bags and a raised eyebrow. "Saw the press conference," she said, placing the food on the table. Linda looked like she swallowed a lemon made of legal bills. Rachel didn't laugh. "They're unraveling." "Good," Natalie said. Then, softer, "Are you okay?" Rachel nodded, but it wasn't conviction. It was fatigue. "I didn't want this to be a war. I just wanted to exist without permission." That afternoon, Ethan's resignation was posted publicly on the Oregon Bar Association site. Effective immediately, Ethan Mathers withdraws from legal counsel duties for the Mathers Family Foundation due to unresolved media conflicts of interest. The last piece of the house caved. Just past 5 p.m., Rachel received a message. From Mom, one conversation. Just us. No TV, no Natalie, no audience. Let's be mother and daughter again. Rachel stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered. But memories rose. Quiet dinners where her voice was ignored. Holidays where her seat was reassigned. Birthdays missed. She typed slowly. "Not everyone needs a reunion." And hit send. Later that evening, social media burned with headlines. Mathers families fall from grace. From arts royalty to public reckoning, clips from Rachel's TV monologue were stitched next to footage of Linda exiting the council meeting. Comment sections exploded with both praise and pity, anger and applause. Near midnight, as Rachel was brushing her teeth, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't private. Linda Mathers at L. Mathers Official. "You've won the spotlight. Hope you've had enough." Rachel stared at the screen for a long time. Then, without a word, she turned it off. "I spent years rehearsing to be loved. Now I rehearse to be free." The apartment smelled of salt and sunlight. Rachel's new place was nothing like her old one. Not because it was bigger or fancier, but because it was hers. The windows faced the sea, and the walls still echoed slightly from the absence of anyone else's voice. That, she found, was not lonely. It was liberating. Most mornings, she drank black coffee by the balcony, watching waves stretch like pages being turned. She no longer reached for her phone to check comments or scroll through anonymous outrage. These days, silence didn't ache. It settled gently. Natalie showed up with soup and sarcasm. "You live in a Pinterest board?" she teased, eyeing the woven rug and mismatched mugs. "I live in my own timeline," Rachel replied, smirking. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, Rachel walked 5 blocks to a community center, her notebook tucked under her arm like a talisman. The sign outside read, "Script Writing 101, but the real course was titled by Rachel on the inside, "Writing from Hurt." Her students were mismatched and marvelous. A postal worker who wrote haikus about divorce. A teenage girl who hadn't spoken to her parents in 3 months. An elderly man who'd lost his wife and only now dared to write her eulogy in chapters. Rachel didn't ask for their stories. They offered them anyway. "We don't write revenge," Rachel told them one afternoon. "We write release." She read them fragments from her early work, the parts that never made it online, stories full of longing, ache, and hope with nowhere to land. The students responded not with applause, but with pens scratching furiously. After one class, the receptionist handed Rachel a letter. Cream envelope, silver ink, no return address. Inside, a single note. "You're not wrong. People just hate mirrors. Uncle Morris." Rachel hadn't heard that name in 15 years. She'd forgotten his slow laugh, but not how he once slipped her a 20 after she'd been denied an allowance for speaking out of turn. She folded the letter slowly. It didn't fix anything. but it softened something sharp inside her. That night, under soft yellow light, Rachel sat at her small kitchen table. No script deadline, no looming performance. Just an open page and the hiss of the kettle. Her new set wasn't about her family. No thinly veiled metaphors. No need to twist pain into punchlines. She wrote about the barista who misspelled Ray as rain. About the jogger who waved at her dog every morning even though she didn't own one. About how, in a pinch, duct tape can hold broken dreams and curtain rods alike. She laughed alone. And for the first time, it didn't feel hollow. "This stuff's different," Natalie said later, reading over her shoulder. "It doesn't bleed." Rachel nodded. "It doesn't have to. Healing isn't a performance." Friday came. The club smelled like old vinyl and lime wedges. Rachel waited backstage, holding the mic loosely. No camera crews, no headlines. Just a modest crowd waiting for stories. Her name was called. She walked up, heartbeat steady. Facing the familiar stage, she paused, then turned her back on it, stepping instead into a new pool of light. One shaped not by what she'd escaped, but by what she was choosing. And she began. "Tonight, I leave a seat for the people who never saw me." The theater was packed, but you wouldn't have known it from the silence. The lights bathed the stage in soft white and amber, the air charged not with anticipation, but with reverence. In the center, one wooden chair sat unclaimed, its back straight, its cushion untouched. No one tried to sit there. No one even asked. Rachel stood backstage, palms warm around the microphone. Her breathing was even, though the weight in her chest was something new. Not fear, not pride, but gravity. Tonight was not a performance. It was something else, something quieter. "Are you ready?" Natalie whispered behind her, fixing a loose thread on Rachel's sleeve. Rachel didn't answer. She only nodded. She walked on stage slowly, the hush thickening around her like fog. The applause didn't rise like it usually did. Instead, people watched her with the stillness of prayer. She stopped beside the chair. "I was once told," she began, voice low, unamplified yet heard by all, "that standing next to the stage was fine, that a seat wasn't necessary when I could lean on the wings and listen quietly." A few heads turned. One woman in the second row pressed her lips together, her eyes already glinting. "I used to believe that I could survive on proximity, that maybe standing near belonging was the same as being part of it." She looked down, her fingers brushing the back of the chair. "But eventually," she said, "you realize your feet hurt. Your back aches, and no one's going to offer you a seat unless you bring your own." A chuckle rose, faint and unsure, but Rachel didn't chase it. She wasn't here to make them laugh. "I spent years building a chair from memory," she continued. "I tried to carve it out of approval, glue it with silence. It broke every time." A man in the audience leaned forward. His shirt said, "I believe survivors." Rachel looked out past the lights. "So I stopped building. I stopped waiting. I stood, alone, until I wasn't alone anymore." From the shadows, Natalie stepped just close enough to be seen. She didn't wave. She didn't move. She was just there. "I carried stories like luggage through an airport that kept changing gates. But tonight," Rachel said, tapping the mic once for balance, "I unpack." She walked slowly around the chair. "This chair isn't a punishment. It's not an invitation either. It's a reminder." She took a breath. "This was supposed to be my seat, but I'm fine standing now." The silence cracked, then swelled. First one clap, then a dozen, then a roar. The audience rose as one, not to cheer, not to worship, but simply to stand. Every row, every section. Even the technician by the sound booth wiped his eyes. Rachel didn't bow. She only nodded once, turned, and walked off stage. Behind her, the lights dimmed. All but one. It hung like a moonbeam over the empty chair. They erased her from the family table. but she rebuilt a stage the world couldn't look away from. The chair they left empty became a symbol of every voice they tried to silence. Justice did not arrive politely. It came dressed as truth, broadcasted live, and echoed in every standing ovation. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, it may have come late, but it was unforgettable when it landed. Sometimes it only takes one person standing alone to prove that the ones in power were never the ones in the right. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or uninvited, perhaps today is the day to step into your own light. Like, share, and subscribe if this story spoke to you. Comment 1 if you felt seen. Comment 2 if you're still waiting for your seat.